Hi, I'm Mark Mortensen. I'm a professor of organizational behavior here at INSEAD, and this is 7 Questions With. So one of the things that's important to understand about hybrid work is it isn't just one thing. A lot of people think hybrid work just means are you in the office or are you working from home? Really, hybrid work is about creating an environment in which people are working in many different ways. Some may be in the office, some may be from home, some may be working from a third site or a different location, but also things like different types of employment contracts or using contingent workers, things like shift work that may be time adjusted. All of these are really components of hybrid work, so we need to think a little bit more broadly about what that means. So one of the real benefits of hybrid work, and we see this time and time again, is it gives people a sense of more control, more autonomy. If I get to choose when and where and how I work, it's actually something we've known since the 1970s is a really critical piece of how you design really effective jobs. So in that sense, hybrid work gives our employees the set of tools and abilities to make their work their own. At the same time, it also does come with some real drawbacks. One of the real sort of main drawbacks that we see is the lack of just the informal interactions, the water cooler conversations, the chats around the coffee pot. You know, and we often think of these as just being, well, these are just sort of nice to have, and look, I can get them anywhere. But particularly in a work context, we often underestimate just how important those are. We learn new ideas, we create new innovations by recombining the things that we see. So it's really an important piece of organizational functioning. We have to make sure that we capture it. So one of the challenges that we're seeing a lot of, and we've seen this throughout a wide range of data, is that when people are working from home, it changes the social dynamics that they have. Not a big surprise. The problem is we underestimate just how important some of those dynamics are. So I may be working from home. It's great for me to spend time with my family, spend time in my community, but I start losing certain types of relationships, the types of relationships that I would find in the office. Typically, these are things like mentors, people who can give me advice around the work that I'm doing, and also relationships that build things like trust. Trust is a critical part in any organization. If I don't have the time where I'm really in the same space, just interacting with, observing, engaging with my colleagues and coworkers, I end up in a situation where trust is diminished. It becomes harder for us to rely on each other to get work done, and that has a real consequence when it comes to the way in which people work. And it can lead people to feel more isolated and lonely. And this is something that builds on research I did with Connie Hadley, where we found that particularly when people are working in these teams where they move around a lot, they break the social bonds, and that has some real consequences. So I would say there's no one thing that you can do that'll guarantee it's a positive experience. What managers can do is really engage in more of a conversation. What we're seeing now is much more of a monologue and not a dialogue, and this is what we really need. We need managers to sit down with their employees, have a conversation to understand what the employees' needs are, but also to share what the organization needs from them. It needs to be a two-directional conversation, and that's really the best way to design hybrid work and any type of work going forward. So team effectiveness and teamwork fundamentally relies on the relationships, the connections between people, and their ability to get stuff done together. Again, a team is a group of people who are working interdependently towards some sort of common goal. So hybrid work starts to introduce barriers. It introduces barriers in understanding. I may not understand exactly the environment you're in. I may not understand what's top of mind for you, how you're functioning. So these barriers start to get in the way of our ability to work smoothly and effectively in a collaborative environment. The other piece of the puzzle is even for individual productivity, the data is mixed. There is certainly data that shows that people can work remotely and be very productive, no question. But it depends a lot on the type of work that they're doing. Recent research out of MIT shows, for example, that in a random controlled trial, people who were working remote actually were less productive, and the people who wanted to work remote actually opt into certain types more. So really what we see in a lot of the data out there is it's a selection effect. The people who want to work remote aren't the same as the people who don't, and that is really skewing a lot of the data that we see out there. So DEI efforts are obviously a very, very critical task for any organization. One of the things that has come up very much in the conversation around hybrid work is what is the impact that hybrid work has Many people are arguing that actually it can be really great if you are in a minority position, if you feel like you're experiencing things like microaggressions from other people in the office. Working remotely takes you out of those, and it's a more positive experience. I would caution about that logic, however, because it doesn't fix the problem. It just means it sort of hides it. You're still going to experience the same problems when you do get together, and what you take away is the ability to actually resolve these collectively, which is what we typically do in a face-to-face environment. So I think what organizations and leaders really need to do to make sure that DEI remains effective within a hybrid environment is just think about what are the cues, the data that we're losing, that we're missing out when we're working remotely, the things that we don't pick up on naturally, and think about how do we put those back into the equation. There's no reason that DEI has to take a hit, but it often does in practice because of the way it's implemented. One piece of advice is really simple: talk. I see lots and lots and lots of pundits and people arguing and yelling back and forth past one another all the time about how you don't understand what we need, and that goes from both directions, executives and employees. What we desperately need more of is a conversation, and it needs to be data-driven. So one of the things that I'm really pushing in a lot of the work that I'm doing is trying to put data on the table for employers and employees to help them to understand what the trade-offs are. It's not right or wrong. It is a system it's a very complex set of factors that we're thinking about. There are trade-offs. We need to put the data on the table so that we can have an intelligent conversation and move it forward. Thanks for joining. I really hope you gained some insights about hybrid working, and I'm going to go work from home. Bye.